I got a Challenger now. Here are my thoughts. Okay, let's turn the car on. Okay, so Dodge Challenger GT. This is the V6 version with about 305 horsepower. It is a rental, so I do have to be respectful in terms of how I drive it. But here we are in Hoboken, New Jersey, right across the water from Manhattan, New York. And it's just as equally annoying to drive in as Manhattan. So luckily, I can do my city driving test here in Hoboken, and then we'll go over to the lower part of Jersey City and then do our freeway test there. And I'll go through like the intricate details of how this car drives around in normal driving conditions in the city and busy traffic, cramped roads, you name it. Which, again, this is a Dodge Challenger. The dash is huge. Everything in this car is pretty huge. So I'll go through some of the features of the car. So I'll also be conducting my parking garage test, which is where I drive through this cramped parking garage. I'm about 4 flights up now, and I'm gonna try to insert my ticket and then pay for the parking ticket on my way out and see how annoying it is to sort of get in and out of the space. So let's go ahead and do that, shall we? I'm excited. I haven't really driven American cars like that before, but here I am driving my second one in under a month. And this color scheme is pretty cool. You can see like is this soft red interior alongside the red leather on the doors. So let's see how this fares. There we go. Yep, this is definitely sketch. Don't really have much room. Alright, almost there. Yeah, so far, parking garage test, pretty sketch, man. I wouldn't recommend bringing in your Challenger to a cramped parking garage in Hoboken, New Jersey at all. Alright, and we're here. Okay, and we arrived at the pay station. So let me see if I can sort of park this up easily. Don't hit the curb, please. Okay. I don't have to open the door or anything. Luckily, I'm pretty close to the machine. And gave me my card back. And we're good. It was easy to get the ticket, but you really can't see where you're placing the car within like a 1 foot radius. And this is something I definitely don't recommend if you have expensive paintwork, which this feels like it does have. So some quick specs now that we're out of the garage is a 3.6 liter V6 engine that makes about 305 horsepower. Again, you know, obviously if you were to get a Challenger, it is the quintessential American muscle car that everybody knows and loves. Get a V8. I said the same thing about the Mustang, but that EcoBoost, it makes sense to have that thing in that car that makes that sound with that power. And this 3.6 liter V6, it sounds like your normal everyday car when you turn the car on and rev the engine. So the sound is just genuinely not there. I would compare the driving style in terms of the steering wheel and the suspension to that of a pickup truck. I know it might sound weird, but the fact that you know you're throwing around a close to 2-ton car, but the steering wheel just feels soft and comfortable. It genuinely feels like you're driving a truck or a minivan. Again, visibility is limited, but if you're an experienced driver and you sort of know where to place the car and when, you shouldn't have too much issue getting in and out of the city area. There are some moments where you clench up and maybe get scared for just a few seconds until you make it out of a specific turn. But other than that, I can't really see much issues. Just, again, this is an automatic car. If you want to have the utmost fun and stay pure to the muscle car heritage of this Challenger, obviously you would get a V8 with a 6-speed manual. But again, you have to cater to the mass public, and the mass public just, you know, will always give up performance for convenience, in my opinion, outside of the traditional car enthusiast. So it makes sense to have this thing in this car. There is a sport mode and modes that you can change within the car, and you have the Super Track Pack that allows you to change driving modes. Space in the car, it is pretty big. The weight of the car is interesting because, you know me, I'm always going to be comparing the car to my own, which is a BMW 3 Series. They weigh almost the same, but this thing feels and looks gigantic comparatively. And on top of that, this is the all-wheel drive version of the car. Additional weight is to be expected, but I don't understand the size of this thing compared to the weight, simply because of the fact that I can fit 5 people somewhat comfortably in the BMW versus this car, which is about the same. So I think the dash itself is pushed very back because I can reach my entire arm over the dash and I still won't touch the windshield. That's how huge this cabin is. And on top of that, there's this insanely elongated hood. One thing I do love about this car is the turning radius. It's ridiculous. I can make a U-turn with this gigantic thing on a normal size street with no problem whatsoever. It kind of makes me think, like, what if I took it drifting? How much angle can I get? Nah, I'm not gonna do that. I can't do that. Besides, it's an all-wheel drive anyway. Not that I would do that. General maneuverability, it's pretty good on this thing. Once you get used to the size, it's similar to driving like a minivan or a pickup truck, like I mentioned earlier. Once you get used to the size, you can pretty much move it pretty quickly in and out of spaces as much as you want. Okay, so overall city driving impressions. The car is gigantic for really cramped city streets such as Manhattan or Hoboken, New Jersey, where I tested. I don't recommend parking it in a parking garage because you won't be able to go around certain tight corners as confidently as you would want. And if you're not paying attention, you're definitely going to scrape this thing somewhere, either on somebody's car or a concrete pillar that you're turning around, whatever the case may be. The steering in the ride is extremely comfortable. Dodge did a really good job in terms of, you know, making it a good everyday daily driver car. The engine itself doesn't make the best or coolest sound. If you're into that sort of thing, if you're buying a V6 Challenger at the end of the day, I'm not really sure if you do care. But overall, it is comfortable, and I do enjoy, you know, sitting in these large, cushiony seats. And the visibility is good, but the elongated hood, along with the gigantic doors and the gigantic rear hips of this car, can make the driver a little bit squeamish when it comes to confidently maneuvering around tight, cramped streets. Okay, that concludes our city driving impressions. Okay, so in terms of the apps of the car, pretty much everything is controlled through this bit confusing dash interface. For example, if I want to heat up my seats, that's how you turn them on and off. Vented seats, that's how you turn on and off. Heat up steering wheel, climate, you name it. Now the apps, you have the mirror dimmer, climate, media, connected device, radio. It shows you the radio. The cool thing about the radio is that you can actually see the map as well while you have your radio window screen open. Vehicle user guide, performance control. You have the current mode, drive mode setup, sport mode setup. So sport mode setup, you can actually see the steering changes between sport, normal, and comfortable, traction, paddle shifting on and off, and the sport engine trans. Basically, the car revs to higher RPMs in whatever gear you're in. That way you get the most torque and power out of the car. You have the nav, and obviously you have your phone interface. Now, one thing I do like about this car, it's Uconnect. Now let's play some unlicensed music so I don't get kicked out of here. My favorite thing about the interior of this car is, in fact, the sound system. Listen to this.
I give you this bread, you run me some head, and then you go blow up a beat. She moved out of state, and shit doing left, she seeking forgiveness.
So yeah, that concludes the interface. Yeah, honorable mention to this electronic dash here that shows coolant temperatures on the digital gauge, but also you can see the speedometer, and messages if you have your phone connected, trip info, fuel economy. It definitely looks cool, as well as these old school gauges here that are large typeface numbers along with the circular pattern. It's pretty cool. And then you have the classic shifter here. Freeway driving impressions. Let's switch camera angles now. Alright, so here we are in nighttime driving test. I'm going to take the car on the freeway and then we'll see how she performs. Let's go for a ride. Rear view camera is actually pretty decent in night mode. Well, considering this is a 2019, I guess the camera is average by today's standards now. So the reason I do these tests at night is because of the fact that there's literally nobody on the road, so there's not that much interference when it comes to, you know, being able to open up the car a little bit. Here we are at my usual stoplight. I'm gonna make a right and open the car up now, so let's see how she performs. Here we go. Now, due to the all-wheel drive system combined by the weight of the car definitely does feel planted to the ground whenever you want to give it some throttle. Now, because of the weight of the car and the fact that it's all-wheel drive, the car definitely feels planted when you're sort of, you know, taking turns at high speeds. Another thing that I noticed is that the change from comfort mode to sport mode is extremely subtle. You wouldn't really notice it unless you actually see the rev counter on the dash, and you just notice that slight hint of the car revving to higher RPMs at speed. Now I know how other people who make movies about cars feel when they get stuck behind a slow moving car on a nice piece of road. It's almost heartbreaking. So just so I can guide you guys, right, my highway driving test starts at the end of Jersey City and then goes off into the Bayonne port area, which again, it's this nice open road. It's literally about 4:30 a.m. right now, and I'm stuck behind some pickup truck driver. I gotta say, these roads here are pretty terrible, and the car is handling them very well. I was waiting for. Let's open it up. Yeah, the noise is just not there. It does sound like a V6. I mean, take that however you want it, even though some M3s are V6s as well. I mean, 300 horsepower, almost 4,000 pounds, 3,800 to 4,000 pounds. Not bad. It is a fun cruising car. I do, however, think that, and this is my honest opinion, this car is perfect for people who live in wide open spaces. For example, the southern United States, or Midwest America, or even the West Coast. Because here on the cramped, tight roads of urban East America, it's not really the best car to have. Because obviously you want to be more efficient and use up less space, right? That's why you have little smart cars in the city and big pickup trucks closer you get to down south or middle America. So this is definitely a car that would fit in the whole open south category. And you have this big dash. Again, I can't even reach my hand to the windshield, so it's giant. It almost feels like you're driving a truck that's built into some sort of a car. And I think that's the appeal of this car too, is the fact that it's this big American muscle, and the Challenger pretty much perfect representation of that. And on top of that, you have all these different configurations for the car, so you can feel like you're driving big American muscle all the while. You know, you have a V6 under the hood. It's affordable, about $33,000, and it's extremely stylish. One of my favorite things about this car is the fact that it has this metallic red paint that pretty much sparkles in the sun, and it looks insane. You have the yellow accents on the front splitter, which is really cool. It gives a nice contrast definitely makes the color pop a bit, and adds this unmistakable characteristic of the car, where it's like this fun, hey, look at me, get out of my way type of feel. I just wish, again, you know, I had a V8 to play with, and I can sort of test out the manual transmission. Try the paddle shifters. I guess they work. I'm not sure how much anybody would want to use them, but they're there, right? They're usable. So yeah, that concludes my test. Overall, it's a fun car to drive. You know, it is a big, heavy piece of metal that you're sort of lugging around on the highway. The V6 is a pretty good engine, nice and responsive. Obviously, when it comes to an NA, that's what you would expect. The noise itself is pretty forgettable, and honestly, if you're into pickup trucks, this is definitely the car for you. So one thing I did want to mention is that the turning radius on this thing, ridiculous. Let me demonstrate. All right, here we go. Let's do a U-turn. No problemo. The engineers probably thought, yeah, this is a pretty gigantic car, let's make the maneuverability pretty easy on it. So good. So good. It's probably my favorite thing about driving this car, is that how easy it is to just like whip it around spaces. The steering, again, really smooth, really comfortable. The engineers definitely did a really good job in terms of making this giant thing really, really soft and easy to drive. Which begs the question, can you properly review a Challenger if you haven't driven literally every iteration of it? Because this is the GT, I think you have the RT, the Scat Pack, the Demon, there's a couple of Hellcats out there, a bunch of different engines that make a whole range of power depending on what configuration you get. So I'm not sure exactly how one person can accurately review a Challenger, because there's a Challenger that come in so many different configurations that go from extreme to mild. It doesn't really make sense how, you know, you can accurately portray how one feels, looks, drives without testing all of them and comparing and contrasting. But nonetheless, the shell of what you get is actually really good. I like the fact that Americans are taking into account, I like the fact that American companies are taking into account the quality of interior. You do have the quintessentially American plastic here that we all know and love, but I mean, it works. I don't want to get into a Challenger and have it feel like I'm driving something luxurious like a German car, like a BMW or Mercedes. That's why everybody complained when the Supra came out and the interior just pretty much looked like a BMW. The buttons, switches, the layout, everything, even the gear shifter. You gotta have your own personality and character to it. American cars do, and I appreciate how, you know, they still keep some of the tacky quirks, like the plastic and like these gigantic steering wheels, but these things definitely have character, and I do appreciate American cars. And my god, one thing Americans do good is paint. The paint on this thing, phenomenal. I might even paint my RX-7 in this color. So there you have it, the Dodge Challenger. A really good touring car, hence the GT in its name. The size might not make it ideal for city driving, but it's the perfect cruiser. The engine gets the job done at 300 horses, but there's a V8 option, and the Demon and the Hellcat versions are available. I personally love the sparkly red paint, the yellow accents on the front bumper, so it definitely has a lot of personality, a lot of flair. Perfect amount of room, extremely comfortable cab, modern touches such as the touch screen. It has launch control, so you can definitely have plenty of fun with it. I just don't recommend it if you live in the city, but other than that, classic American muscle. You can't go wrong with the Dodge Challenger. The size of the hood and the dash itself reminds you of a pickup truck, so if you do have a pickup truck and you're in the market for a car, this is pretty much the car for you. It's weird to say, but if you do sit in it, it'll make sense. Thanks for watching.